time do we start?
No.
Yeah, we can get started, yeah.
No.
No. All right.
You're going to sit up here.
Okay.
Yeah.
You care where?
No, where do you want to?
It's like it's here.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to this Tacoma Startup Week panel on finding the right investor. First, thanks to KT putting up all the events for Tacoma Startup Week, and then also thanks to Karina for giving us a space. And Karina, can you come up and tell us about everything you do here?
Sure. Hi, everyone, and then thank you to our lovely panelists for joining us this afternoon. My name is Karina Martia Harris, and I am the program manager for the Tacoma Maritime Innovation Incubator. So what we do is we realize that Tacoma has a working class port right in our backyard. So with that being said, we help entrepreneurs specifically looking to get into the maritime trade, logistics, or sustainability space, provide the resources that they need in order to be successful. So that way they can build and scale their business right here in Tacoma and or Pierce County. Thank you again, Jason, for hosting this, and thank you to our panelists for being here. And I'll turn it back to you.
Yes. So next, I'm gonna have Charlie come up. Charlie's a Seattle headshot specialist out of Seattle. He has a special deal for everyone taking care part of this panel right now. Yeah. Tell them what you do and your deal for them.
Yeah, so I'm a professional photographer. Over the past couple of years, my specialty has been headshots for people in business. And a lot of people, you will notice, whether it's on their website or whether it's on LinkedIn, especially when you're in business, when you see profile photos of people, sometimes it's someone holding up a fish. Sometimes it's someone with a dog. Most of the time it's just a bad selfie, or it's just a really terrible crop from a larger group photo. And while those may be good just to kind of like as an introduction to someone, as trite as it sounds, you can only make one first impression. And it's really important that if you're looking for funding or looking for a job or anything, you've got to make that really good professional first impression. It's so important. I like to say we live in a swipe left, swipe right world. If I can borrow that from a dating app, that it only takes people less than 40 milliseconds to make a judgment about you. So that's why it's important to have good lighting, to dress appropriately for your industry. You also need to look confident, and you also need to look approachable. There was a study done. I was trying to find it. I couldn't find it. I read about it a few weeks ago, where even if your headshot isn't all that good, and you're still working with someone, even after a couple months, they still have that first impression of you in their mind, and it does filter their opinion of you. So, even though you think, okay, I'll get the job, and yeah, my headshot doesn't look all that great, and I'll prove on my work through my work, that filter is still in there. People are still seeing you through that first impression. So that's how important it is, and it is an investment. But you invest in your websites, you invest in your marketing, you invest in everything else. This isn't only investing in yourself, but it's also investing in your business. If you have any questions about it, I'll be around. I'll be happy to speak with you.
Thanks, Charlie.
Okay.
A little known fact about Charlie: he used to be the photographer for the rock band Queen back in the day.
Oh, well. Nice.
Yeah. All right. So hello, my name is Jason Cavness. I'm the CEO founder of Cavness HR. We deliver HR companies 49 of few people by automating HR products and services and provide an HR business partner. If you're in this room right now, part of Tacoma Startup Week, we'll do a handbook and HR policy for free for you. Also, host a podcast called Jason Cavness Experience, where I talk to interesting people. Dan's been on there. Chris is going to come on. I've had a U.S. Olympian, a brain surgeon, and different people on there, right? So pretty eclectic. So first, we're going to start with Dan. Can you introduce yourself and tell us some of your background?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Dan Conibas. I am the managing partner at Triple Summit Advisors. We are a registered investment advisor doing financial planning and investment management services here in the Seattle, Tacoma area, but also where my business partner is located in Boston as well. We manage about $60 million for clients around the country. But that part's not why I'm here. The reason why I'm here, Jason and I met many moons ago through Bunker Labs, which some of you may know, helps veterans and the military connect communities start businesses. And so through that, and also through my own connections and network and just work in the industry and things like that, and tech, et cetera, I've come to be an investor in, and I just counted before coming here, 7 different deals individually as an angel, and also 3 funds, not including the Seattle Angel Conference, which I've done a few times as well. So I have a bunch of experience for the last 7 or 8 years doing individual deals and also being part of funds and things like that. And happy to talk about connecting with the right investors and just thinking about how to raise money for your new venture.
Thanks, Dan. T.
Hi, I'm T. Potter. I'm an investor with Trilogy Equity Partners. A bit about Trilogy is we invest in early stage software companies in the Pacific Northwest region. So early stage seed rounds with super strong founders building or trying to solve a use case is what we focus on. And then the technology could be large language models or not large language models, it's not a problem. So software companies in the region is some like founders we want to talk to. And I have not actually been to Tacoma before, so super excited about meeting founders here building in the space. We are also one of the few VC firms around here writing lead checks. We lead the round that we come in, and we do our follow-on till Series A. We have invested in over 85 companies over a period of 17 years. We've been around here for a long time, so super strong network, very, very solid founders, and happy to talk about our investment thesis or portfolio with anyone who's interested. Quickly about me, before joining Trilogy, I've spent 9 years leading engineering teams in various companies. I'm a software engineer by undergrad. Started my own company for a couple of years for many reasons that seem very trivial now. Did not understand then, a co-founder, how important they are, how you have to create the market to sell in the market, and a lot of other things. So a lot of good learnings on the ground. Came to the States for my business MBA, and then worked in finance investment banking at Bank of America Merrill Lynch for 2 years before moving to the startup world again in VC. And I love Seattle, absolutely. I mean, the place I grew up in back in India could not be more similar to this place, and love the outdoors too.
Thanks, T. Mark.
Thank you.
Yeah, good to meet you.
Good to meet you.
I think I'm the only one that's not working for an investment company up here. So I've been on your side of the chair before, but have worked for startups and founded companies at many different levels. So obviously as a founder, very early stage, late stage, so have gone to all different levels of investment and been the one that pitches it and tries to get funding. I'm also an individual investor and have tended to invest in diversity-led or veteran-owned organizations is my personal passion. And so I follow that with my money. I've invested in businesses. I have 5 children. So a lot of my investments have been with businesses with one of my children. Or multiple of my children, I should say. And right now I am an executive for a startup, late stage startup called Aptio that was just purchased by IBM. So I keep forgetting that as of yesterday, I'm an IBM employee, which is kind of a new reality. So we'll see. I don't know. I was telling these guys that I always need to be doing something that feels, like changing, driving, building. It's just the way I'm wired. So I will either find something within IBM to drive change and build something new, or I'll go back to the startup world. So looking at Tacoma, I just bought a home in Tacoma. So I've lived in Bellevue, Issaquah, and now we're living here. So excited to be here.
Thanks, Margaret. Christopher.
Yeah, I think I'm one of the less tenured people on this panel, but thank you for inviting me, Jason. I'm with a pre-seed venture capital fund. We invest in business-to-business enterprise software and government tech, actually. So we like to look at companies that are dual use or that sell to both public and private industries or corporations. And then we're not a lead investor like Trilogy, but we're often one of the first checks in. after an MVP or the formation of an idea where a company comes about. And I'm a venture partner with the fund. Our fund started in Gainesville, Florida at the University of Florida. And we're new-ish to Seattle. We've been here about a year and a half, 6 months after the formation of our Fund One, which we're currently on. We've just closed our third Seattle-based investment and our 11th investment in our fund. A little bit of background, like personal background on myself, since I've only been with the fund for about a year. I spent 6 years in government. 3 of that was military. I know you guys both mentioned military. You mentioned you invest in veteran-owned businesses, so thank you. And 3 of that have been in engineering. So I've been an engineer with consulting company and the state of Washington, which I currently still hold that role. A little bit about my personal background other than my professional. I'm a first-time even high school graduate out of my family, and now I've been to 5 colleges and 2 Berkeley executive education programs. And I'm excited to keep growing in Seattle, and definitely being more a part of Tacoma is good. So I'm glad to be here.
Thanks. So the next question is kind of off topic, but I think it's relevant. So I start with Christopher first. Can you tell us how you take care of yourself both mentally and physically, and the importance of founders doing the same thing?
Yeah.
Great question.
I think the military helped me a lot in that way. With the physical aspect, of course, I'm a big believer in exercise. I think some form of exercise every day keeps our mind fresh, keeps our mind sharp, and the ability to grow that way. And then, of course, mental. It's kind of a hard way, or the mental aspect of it is kind of difficult in the entrepreneurial world, because if you're an entrepreneur, you're going to be crazy in some ways. So staying sane can be, for me personally, either reading a book or taking 1 to 2 hours out of my day, which oftentimes is all I have, to work on personal relationships, friends, going out with friends, or spending time with family. So it's either through exercise or being social, how I kind of maintain my sanity.
Thank you, Margaret.
It's a great question. So I take health very seriously, and I've always worked way too many hours. So it's not, I probably don't have great work-life balance, but I also raised 5 kids. So somehow I call it work-life imbalance. You just kind of fit everything in. I don't think there's a separation of the different parts of your life. You kind of focus on one thing. I set boundaries. So I always tell new parents, especially new mothers that I coach, set the boundary around things that are sacrosanct. So for us, it was dinner. We always sat down at the table. I loved cooking. I took my kids to school, and I just learned how to be very open about those boundaries to people that I was working with. And, I'd always say, if you're a butts and seats kind of person or a butts and seats company, I'm not a good fit. If you're all about productivity and how we get things done, and you're flexible, this is pre-COVID, right? Because we kind of had to be that way during that. But, then we'll get along great, because I'll, probably produce more than you'd ever imagine, but it's not going to be sitting, at this seat. I meditate, and I would highly, highly recommend that. Deep breathing, meditation. I don't think I could calm my mind otherwise. A little bit of a biohacker. I'm always looking at supplements and diet. I'm gluten-free. I'm mostly dairy-free, so I still need my meat, even though I probably should eat less of that. But so just kind of always looking for ways to optimize and youth. And, I just think, being healthy and then staying curious. I love reading. I love learning. And I think that I can't imagine ever retiring, because I feel like when we stop wanting to learn and grow, that's when we die. And I see it. I mean, and so for me, it's just always wanting to, kind of keep that curiosity and wanting to understand, what else is there. And you can always learn. I mean, I do not have a background in tech, but I just found that I loved learning about it. And so I don't think it matters, education or whatever. It's where's your passion and what drives you and what excites you.
Thank you, Margaret. T.
All great points. I think physical health, everyone has their own style, getting the macros right. So no expert advice there, but it's important to take care of food, macros, and everyone has a system that works for them. On the other side, I would say that on the mental health side, this is what I've been trying to do since my startup days when the world seems like a chaos, nothing makes sense, you have really bad and good days, is two things. In the morning, I anchor myself by reflection, and these are words, I taught them, but these are a part of my daily life. And at the end of the day, I take a step back, because there are days where you'll have good days. There are days of like, I wish I could just turn back time and say something different, say something smarter, or do something. There's a lot of I wish moments that come every day. And again, the new day overrides everything. In the long, something I was told at different work-life situations where investment banking, you work 20 hours a day, VC, you work 10, it doesn't matter how many hours you work. It's a marathon. It's not a battle. Today, if you lose something, win something doesn't mean you lose or win through the whole. So putting that in perspective of like, how do I feel today? And it happens more often than not that at the end of the day, when I'm driving, I just go into my own zone mode. And I kind of replay everything and say, how could I be better tomorrow? How will I handle the situation intentionally when it comes again because I was thrown off today? Or if I did something okay, how can I make sure I do it again the next time? Always helps me anchor myself and feel prepared for the next day. In the morning, my coffee is sacrosanct because that's what I anchor myself is like, what do I feel? It's just like given the chaos of the number of things we're handling, it just helps me that way. So that's the mental health thing from my perspective. But on the founder side, there's more that I tell them is, at times you might think about funding or maybe taking time off. Putting money in the business is one thing. You also have to carve out that for yourself. You cannot worry about vacations with your family or spending time with them. You cannot not pay yourself. And when life should be easy for you to focus all your energy in building your business, but if you're fighting multiple fronts, that gets even harder. So make sure everything else is taken care of and you focus all your energy in business so that you have to carve out some money for that too. And taking time off, as Margaret said, boundaries in a way that you need that switch off time. Don't feel guilty about taking the time and say, productivity is more important than how many hours you work and how effective you are.
Thanks, Steve. Dan?
So I agree with what Margaret was saying earlier about work-life imbalance. I'm raising two young kids while also running a business and everything that's involved with that as well. And so it very much feels like that right now. But one thing I found that works pretty well for me is in high school, I was an athlete, cross-country, track and field, and wrestling. And so people depended on me to show up. Right, I need to show up for my team. I need to show up for my coach. Otherwise, we would lose, or we would disqualify or something like that. Right. So, I need to show up. In the Army, definitely need to show up. Right. There's no choice about that. Right. People depending on you to show up. And I noticed that in those environments, I was definitely my healthiest, or at least from a physical standpoint. People were depending on me to show up for, actual physical activities, for working out or whatever it is it might be. It's harder to find that outside of those environments where it's not mandatory physical fitness. And so what I've done that's worked really well for me is I have a friend who's agreed to be my accountability buddy, right? So we actually, this is what we do. This is what we've chosen to do. It's just for us. Doesn't necessarily mean it's active work for everybody. We literally weigh in every Sunday morning. We weigh in. Wow. That's what we do. And so, I'm kind of following his lead on this because he's more, he does more research on it and things like that. But it's an easy way to check, like, are you being accountable or not? So you can say, oh yeah, I did 3 workouts, but how hard did you work? What did you actually do? It's not entirely clear. You weigh in, you kind of know. So that's kind of the way I'm staying accountable, and it's worked for me. I just wanted to throw that specific tactic out there. Not the weighing in part, but the accountability, the friend to be accountable with.
Is this someone you climb Mount Rainier with?
No, it's actually not the person I climb Mount Rainier with, but it's It's so funny. I don't think we would ever suggest that to each other. It's funny. Have you met Dan? He's
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. That's right. No, but it's just goes to show you different strokes for different folks. I literally climb Mount Rainier with this other friend, but he would never ever suggest, hey, let's weigh in every Sunday.
Nice. All right.
Yeah.
So next, start with Dan. What led you to become an angel investor, and why do you enjoy investing?
Yeah. Great question. So for me personally, I used to live in the Bay Area from 2010 to 2018. And just like here in this area, in the Puget Sound area, you are surrounded by, get constantly influenced by, can't help but see technology, entrepreneurship, investing, right? All these things are kind of intertwined. And so my entire post-Army career, I've been a finance guy. I've worked at tech companies, but as a finance guy, like I've not been, I don't know how to do a single line of code or anything like that. But nonetheless, it's something that still is kind of pervasive in the atmosphere on the West Coast. And so you get to talking to people, and one thing leads to another. Okay, I understand the finance part. I work at a tech startup, but specifically, I worked at a company called Zipline, which is drone delivery. And you start to understand different ways that, this company that's looking for investment might have a viable path to being something bigger or something more valuable. So you might want to become part of that story. And then, you find different people who are, very experienced at it, folks like T who do it for a living, who could kind of teach you the ropes about, hey, this is what you should look for in a deal and things like that. And as you become more and more enmeshed in this ecosystem, it just happens naturally. That's where your interest goes. And my interest is investing, and tech was all around me. So it kind of just naturally happened. And then, it allows you to be part, as an angel investor, be part of a story, generally from the ground floor or close there too. And you get to, be part of something, which hopefully, in the beginning, those folks might want some of your advice and help. But as time goes on, hopefully they become much bigger than you, and therefore they don't need you anymore, which is great because that means everyone's been successful.
Thanks, Dan. So T, talk about your journey to become a VC and why you enjoy it.
Great question. Rewind to the time when I had my own startup. I was the poorest and broke, but also the happiest part of my life. And I just can't explain it. But from there, when I moved to the States, the tech, startup, banking, and finance, I was looking for what do I want to build for myself for the future? And I was like, I have to do something in the startup world. I have to work with founders because that's where I found my energy. Again, you just can't build a startup by yourself because you need to have something to build. And I decided I wanted to come and invest in early stage companies where you're not just looking at metrics and growth numbers for growth stage, but you come and meet founders when they're ideating, when they have traction. That is a beautiful time to come in, more art than science, to figure out if that's going to be a worthy investment, because a lot of things go inside it. Like I could bring in my tech experience and understand, okay, as a product, because we invest in software, how that's going to turn out. And then, of course, the founder's experience, it ties so many data points together to make that decision. It kind of fit into my whole journey and gathering this experience together. So I found that to be my strong suit, and I wanted to come to Seattle, as I mentioned. I was also in the Bay Area before this. I mean, not for long. It was during COVID times, a lot of working from home. But during the time of that 2 years, I was in the Bay Area. I'm like, I don't think I'm going to stay here for the next few decades. So chose Seattle as an upcoming area of tech talent, took a bet in this ecosystem, which I still stand by. I think a lot of we just had a conversation yesterday in which if you look at a graph of the number of tech talent coming out of the great companies here and the number of investment startups, Seattle is in the top quadrant of available supply for founders, right? Given the expertise here. So I do feel it's going to change very, very rapidly in the coming years. And I think I'm really happy to be a part of the Trilogy team, one of the few very active lead investors in this area, where the beauty about working with our portfolio founders is we take a board seat, we work with them from day 0 to their Series A, even after that, of course, and you get to see all the motions, like different companies have different go-to-market motions, how they're preparing for Series A, and you help them in all these different, which also goes back to your learning that you can recycle to work with future companies. So it's just like a virtuous cycle. So the stage, the team, and the ecosystem is, I think, was perfect combination for me.
Thank you, T. Margaret, what led you to be an angel investor and why you enjoy it?
Yeah, I was trying to think what I would call myself, because I don't think I ever call myself an investor, because I guess I'd call myself more of a micro investor almost in some ways, but so often it is my time, I would say first, that I invest. Like, I am very gracious, I guess, with my time, in that I've never said no to anyone that wants to say, can I bounce this idea off you? Will you help me think this through? Will you coach me on this? I've served on boards. I've been, gratis marketing advisor, product management advisor, because my background is kind of product marketing, that area. And then when I have invested dollars, it's been varied, and it's been everything from directly, into a technology startup. It's been into, I just did a restaurant 18 months ago, which was an interesting investment. It's been in people. I would say the one consistent is it's rarely, I love technology, and I would say my biggest mistakes as both an executive and an investor is when I get too excited about the technology and I don't look at the fundamentals because it's really easy. Like 2 startups, I can say that imploded. I got so excited about the technology that I wasn't paying attention to cues that I should have been, right? And so you learn. But I would say in general, I get excited about the people and the possibilities and just investing in them and their passion and their dream. Which means sometimes you'll make mistakes because we're human. But I would say, my return is watching people and lives change. And I had a financial advisor once tell me when I made an investment and I didn't think I was going to make any money back. And at the time, it was a lot of money for me. And he said, could you earn it again? And it kind of stopped me because I always thought I need that $1 million back, or I need that, I was very set on, getting a financial return. He says, okay, but what did you learn? What did they learn? Is there something different you would do next time? And can you earn it? And it stopped me, and it was a wash. Like, it was a horrible, horrible investment. But I did, it's like you come back and you look at different ways. Maybe you have to go back and, work for another company and, work your way back up again and have a financial foundation again. That was one really strong learning and advice for me. And then I would say I've done things, I guess most human example I can give is I had a young woman who worked for me who, if you can think of every step of the way to have, life against you, single mom, had her first kid at 16, shouldn't have been even doing what she was doing. And just like bad things just kept happening, to her. And my investment in her was I bought a house and rented it to her because she was going to have to leave. And I loved having her work for me, and I could just see her changing and growing. And so sometimes you make investments that make no financial sense. Like I didn't need to buy a house, right? But to buy a house and have her rented and her kids could go to school, it was right near the elementary school. That's probably one of the investments that I'm most proud of.
Yes, Margaret. Christopher?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I share some of Margaret's sentiment. Two of the main reasons I even got into venture capital was, one, I'm a naturally intrinsic thinker. I'm a very curious person. I want to know what you're working on. I want to know what problem you're trying to solve. And then 2, I think one of the biggest resources I could ever have in my network, or for me personally, is human capital. I love people. I genuinely want to get to know you. I want to be around you. I want to know, what you're about, what your background is. And then if I can take that curiosity and I can take, my love for you, or my love for you as a, business owner, and then help you in some way, I want to do that. And I found venture capital as the perfect vehicle to take people and help their business. And then you know, if you think about the function as a, you know, of what a venture capitalist does is they provide a network to the founder or, you know, resources to the founder to help them grow. And that's really, you know, all I want to do at the end of the day. I want to help somebody grow. I want to help somebody understand. It doesn't matter where you came from. It doesn't matter what your background is. If you're passionate about a problem and you want to solve it, I want to help you.
Thanks.
And so that's ultimately my answer.
So next question, start with Christopher. What's your definition of an early stage startup?
What's my definition of early stage
Yeah.
startup? So for 161, we are post MVP. So we want to see products, but we want to see pre-significant traction. So anywhere from, I'd say 0 to 500,000, or maybe not 0, 250 to 500,000 annual recurring revenue is, you know, what we'll want to see for the earliest stage of your company, right? Like, we're not going to invest before that, and we generally won't invest after that.
What was the amount of ARO?
500, around 500,000 pre-seed is what our investment fund focuses on. And then I don't want to see your valuation probably above 12, 13 million. So I can keep a reasonable amount of equity for my investment.
All right, thanks, Christopher. Margaret, what's your definition of an early stage
Yeah, it's
startup?
usually seed round to Series A. Although I feel like rounds have all moved up, like A is B and B is C. So maybe there's like kind of pre-seed and seed now. I feel like everything has kind of evolved in that way. And I think you brought up something really important that maybe this is a later question, but just around your cap table and how clean it is. And just as you're taking funding, just really thinking about that from the very beginning, because it makes such a huge difference as you go get more funding, how people are going to be looking at your company, you know, your own return. But I always want to look at the cap table, especially if I'm coming into the company and they've already been through a couple of rounds of funding, you know, then I really want to understand what that looks like. So just kind of adding that to your mental model and always looking at that is important.
Thank you, T. What's your definition?
Yep. So for it, there are two ways of thinking about it. For founders that we're meeting for the first time or first-time founders, definitely an MVP. Post-traction, we don't have a dollar amount. It could be POCs with the intention of being paying customers in terms of B2B enterprise. If it is B2C, it has to be solving a really strong problem, which is in a new market. Greenfield depends upon who others are there, and then also the metrics of like, hey, you have these many downloads, sure, but that converts to your people who have used it one time, completed something, and are paying customers. So it differs, but some kind of traction which is relevant for the company is important. On the other hand, we also do kind of go in earlier with certain founders who are second-time, third-time founders, maybe also our ex-portfolio founders, whom we have worked and exited, or maybe someone that's been in industry for 20 years. One of our companies, Maximal Learning, 25 years at Microsoft, building something in their expertise area. And if our bet was, usually a bet's always on the founders. And if there's a solution that exists, and if someone can build it, it is this team that will build it, or else maybe it'll just a problem that cannot be solved. So different ways of thinking about it, but I would say mostly for a bulk of the deal flow that we get, we do look at traction, and then we are one of the first institutional capital that goes into the company.
I like what you said before, though, that you validate the use case. So they have to know their persona, know their use case.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that.
And it's always like, to your point, and I completely agree with you, there have been times where like, this technology is so cool, and then you build a tech and then find the use case for it. Yeah. It's a good, it's not venture scalable, I would say. It's a good thing to work on that, but it's more like a different style. So now we always like, what's the use case you're solving for is the first thing that we ask.
Thank you. Dan?
So because I don't do the angel investing professionally or venture investing professionally, my definition is basically any company or team that will take my check, basically. And
that's gonna be a lot.
That would be the case, right? And I'm gonna tell you a quick story of when that wasn't the case. So, you know, write typical angel investing checks, let's say as small as 10,000, and if I have a lot of conviction in something, and or the deal calls for it, maybe up to as much as 50,000. Although for me personally, that's really stretching it. But that's what I would consider to kind of be a typical angel investment sort of range. Some angels are wealthier and they can go higher. But if you get a lot, very, very large checks, then maybe you're no longer an angel, maybe you're now kind of a fund. So, but anyways, folks who, I think I can be part of the story, and I like what they're doing, and I see signs that they have a chance of making it, and they want my check. Great, that's fantastic. There's no necessarily revenue target or anything like that, or revenue size that is a hard cap for me. I did once have a company that I forget now who else they were backed by, but they definitely they were raising kind of in a pre-seed round, so they still wanted angel checks. And I talked the founder down from, she was pretty clear, it's like 50,000 is the minimum. I'm like, okay, I can't do that, right? Will you do 25? And after some back and forth, she said yes. Okay, fine. And so I thought everything was good, right? And she sent me the paperwork, I'll sign the safe, that sort of thing. She calls me the next day and said, sorry, we're all filled up. So there you go, an example of a founder who didn't want my money. So, and they're still around. I don't know how successful they've been. I hope they've been very successful. I wish I could have been a part of that story, but sometimes that happens too. They're too big for me.
All right, thanks. So next question is kind of like the slight exaggeration. The heightened myth stereotype is that someone gets an idea on a napkin, next day they raise $25 million, And so when founders come to you with high expectations, how do you taper it down? Of course, you don't want to break their spirit and tell them, stop, but how do you taper expectations, so to speak? Follow your dream, follow your business, but maybe tone it down just a little bit. How do y'all work to do that? Sorry, Dan. Okay,
yeah, I actually have a perfect story for this for right now, because I just experienced this a week or so ago. A very, very good friend in the Bay Area who is a marketing professional in the games industry. Very talented, 20 years of experience, and knows what he's doing, and he's worked for a lot of the big game developers in the world, actually, not just here in America. And he started a new studio, and I think their angle is great. What they're trying to build is great. The specific type of game development they're doing is very of the moment. In their deck, originally they mentioned that they wanted to raise $5 million or something like that, right? And they also told me, this gentleman who had never raised money before, he also told me, oh, I also, we're raising money from angels. And I'm like, okay, if you're raising $5 million, if that's what you're shooting for, what angel checks are you looking for? And he was like, okay, we're not based on what my co-founder said, we're not going to go under $250,000 for an angel check. I'm like, okay, you've just eliminated the vast majority of angels out there. Sorry, that doesn't work, right? And so this happens all the time, where folks who've never done this before have an idea or some thought in their head that doesn't really jive with the market. And this is where you go out to the market and try to get that feedback, so that you can present your best foot forward and make sure that what you're looking for matches the market you're trying to raise from. Otherwise, you're just wasting everyone's time. So that's the type of feedback I give to folks. And not his fault. I love this gentleman. He's great, but he'd never raised money before, and so this is what the feedback that not just me but other folks have given to him.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, so talking about the repeat founders or people who are doing it for the second time, if they come up with an idea, never has happened that they've come up with a napkin, but more this is what I want to do. And we do give our time to iterate the idea with them, and it may take 2 months and 3 months and 4 months to help them flesh out. And these are not for everyone, but someone we have worked with before was like, okay, let's help you answer questions that would help you narrow down your idea and build something. So that's one process that we take very seriously. 3 of our investments in TEP 2, or our latest fund, has been through that. On the other hand, we also get to meet a vast majority of founders, in which some of them would, once you have gone through the deck, the first question is, where are you at your MVP? And to be like, you just realized you just saw wireframes, or maybe screenshots or designs. great idea, but we are always, I would say, always nice and courteous and say, this sounds great, given the way our investment focus works, we would need to see some traction and the MVP needs to be there. So why don't we touch base again in like, how long do you need to build it? Like 6 months, 12 months? And it has also happened. And then we make sure we check in. If we like the premise on the idea, we check in. But it's just like navigating. And if it was a napkin, we would say, all right, we'll talk to you, come back again. So it depends how they approach. But we always make sure, as you said, Margaret, like we take the time. We never say, oh, we're too busy for you. Spend the time with them. Maybe something in your conversation will help them, which will help them with the idea. But it's never investment grade situation at that time.
All right, thank you, Margaret.
Yeah, I like what Dan said, because I think angel investing is perfect to help you get to the point where you have that POC, where you have that MVP. So usually the first step I'm seeing is a feasibility plan, a business plan, I always have to say, document it, write it down, because there is an incredible exercise writing something into a document that is structured. And you can find templates of it everywhere. If it's a first time, kind of business founder, getting them to put that into words. And then the first thing I do is I'll read through that and put, comments throughout and tell them to go have 10 people read this from all different places, their mother, it doesn't matter. Like, just have people read this and make sure they understand it. And I just had a former colleague of mine that reached out that has this concept of I'll just call it a community platform for ease of description. And every time I've talked to him the last 3 times, it goes in a different direction, right? And I'm like, okay, I love your passion, I love your ideas, but as soon as someone says blue, then you move and it's blue, right? As someone says green, you're immediately going green. It's like, what is the MVP? What is the core place you're going to start? Like, just start and focus, right? And then what is the business model? Because that kept changing too, right? So those are the things that I will always look for. And you still have to have those pieces, but usually if there's someone that's an angel investor type, they will also play that kind of advisor role. I mean, I love that you do that with people that you've worked with before. So find those people that you trust. And then if there's a point where you need the 20, 25, 50, 100,000, sometimes it'll go up that high, to get that together, then you're in a position, right, to go validate it in the market. You have something to show to potential customers. You have something to show them to, the next level of investor that can give you the $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, whatever it is that you need. But that voice of truth and someone you can trust to rip it apart, because trust me, it doesn't matter how many times I've done this, it gets ripped apart. So someone that has that compassion, but has been there, that can really push you on that, and finding that business model, finding that use case, finding that right customer and the persona within those customers is key.
Thanks, Margaret. Christopher.
Absolutely. I think to get, a founder or founders on the right track, if they're off of it, they need to fundamentally understand their business or what they're trying to sell to the end user. If they have an inflated valuation, helping them understand their TAM might be a good starting point. Like, what do you ultimately want to grow your business to become? And then do you have this early traction to back that up? I think, and just talking post-product, right? Not pre-idea, but if you have an MVP, and then of course, giving advice, like T said, finding, if you're a first-time founder, maybe finding a serial founder that you could talk to, or somebody in the same space you're trying to work in to give you advice is a great starting point. Especially if you're talking to investors that aren't operators, you definitely want to have some kind of operating advice to go off of, whether that be through an accelerator program, an incubator, or something. And then having, those resources to utilize to get the correct valuation, I think can be important. And then, of course, having traction, right? If you're not sure where to value, you can look potentially at competitors, if there's any competitors already building in that space that may be ahead of you. If you don't see any competitors, You know, do you have letters of intent? Do you have customers that are going to buy your product, or maybe have verbally said they want your product? Finding those metrics to correctly value what you're building can be extremely important in the early stages.
Thanks. So next question, two-part question. I'll start with Christopher. What's a founder characteristic that influences you to say yes, and a founder characteristic that influences you to say no?
A founder characteristic.
Yeah.
I think,
Yes,
I'll just start with one of the most important ones we may look for, especially in the early stages, right? Like if a founder hasn't built something in the past, maybe they're a first-time founder. We want to look for founders that have been through adversity. Have they overcome a big challenge in their life, and how did they get through that? And did they come out, you know, on top on the other side? I think that can be incredibly important to speaking to the mindset of the founder, if they can get through these hard challenges when building a company, because it's going to come often, right? Like you have to have that mindset to get over those humps. And then something that might turn me away from a founder is if they're stuck on solo building the company. A founder that may think, I don't need advice, I don't need help. I don't need
flexibility.
Right. I don't need anybody else to tell me what to do. I can build this on my own. Like that's going to be a big red flag for most investors, I think.
Right. Thank you, Margaret.
I would say integrity first. I look for both in founders, but also in, you know, other leaders I want to work with. So in co-founders or other executives, or if I'm going to work for a company, you know, the CEO at that company. And I'm always amazed at that's a superpower, frankly. And so that would be number one. I think courage is really important. Kind of speaking to what you do, it takes a lot of courage, you know, to start something up. You're putting your whole world into it, and you know, sometimes putting things at risk. And then curiosity. I'm going to go back to that because there is just something, you can see it in people when they're doing this, because they really want to change the world in their way. And that change the world passion, you honestly, you can't make someone have that. Like it's just naturally in you or not. So those are top of mind. And then, I mean, there's smarts and there's a whole bunch of other things, but like the things that, you know, just really suck me in. And then I agree, arrogance. I will turn the other way in 10 seconds if you are coming off as someone who, you know, you have something no one else has solved, which is never true. You know, you're better than anyone else, which is never true. You're smarter than someone else. You're more connected. You're more, whatever it is. And I meet people like that all the time. And it just, I have a really hard time not just shutting down, you know, with that.
Thank you, Margaret. T?
All great points. Don't want to rephrase, but for us, coachability is super important. And the way we think is, a lot of times we hear those questions like, oh, do I have to have a deck? Do I have to pitch to to investors? And the reason that investors take a look at the founders so hard is that in the beginning years of a startup, the founder is the person selling to customers. And if you have to convince your customers to buy a product, we are just a demo for you. So can you convince us? And it comes through, as you said, passion for the product. It doesn't,
Vision,
the
right?
vision,
Yeah.
it's not, no one needs to be a salesman here, but the vision, the passion, why you're building it, having that clarity of thought. So we look for that, like, is there a clear vision? And also being super self-aware that it'll change. Companies pivot, the idea changes based on the feedback you get from the market. A product will go through different motions, but are you flexible enough to be responding to all those changes? Or as you said, the arrogance part, like I'm going to build what I want and then everyone else can figure it out. And then and if you ask them like, why will your customers use it? You just come up with a very random thing because it's a spectrum of many soft qualities that you kind of pick up when you're talking to them, but these are one of the few ones. And integrity too. You need to make sure that it's very hard to judge it in the first few meetings, but I think being the self-awareness part, like when you ask all these questions, it's okay to say, that's a good one. I haven't figured it out. Let me circle back with you. Absolutely perfect. Instead of being defensive, which is also we take very seriously about like how will you respond to changing situations. And given that a business takes 8 to 10 years to build, how strong is the founder or the team and the team dynamic? The team has to have a very, because the times are going to get tough in the future. How will this team weather the storm?
Thanks, Steve. Dan?
I'm going to use two concepts from Warren Buffett to answer this. And normally, for when we're talking about angel investing and venture and things like that, Warren Buffett normally doesn't enter the conversation, but I think it's pretty appropriate here in the wealth management world. Certainly, when we talk about Warren Buffett's concepts a lot. So, in angel investing and just looking at deals and ideas and potential investments, I'm constantly putting things in the too hard pile. I don't understand it. The situation doesn't look right. I don't have time to invest in it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It takes a certain threshold, a pretty high threshold for me to want to dig in. Most things just go into, again, Warren Buffett's idea of the too hard pile. You just stay away from those things because otherwise you fool yourself into thinking that you know more than you actually do. Constantly trying not to do that. And so along those lines, so the things that I'm looking for in a founder really actually, and again, because it's too hard otherwise, is experience. So if you founded a company before, great. If you're an experienced executive, that you have relevant experience, but this is your first time founding a company, great. If you're just starting out and you have an idea and you haven't done this before at all, you don't have any business experience at all, probably going to be in a too hard pile for me. That's just my personal bias, but this is just the amount of time I have to invest in it and how deep I can personally go in these things. That's how I do it. And then for the things that are immediate turnoff, I go back to the integrity piece as well. There are way too many people in this world who unfortunately don't have integrity. And so like trying to make, in my opinion, okay, Warren Buffett's words, trying to make a good deal with a bad person just doesn't work. Like it just doesn't work. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you are. It just doesn't work. Okay, I'm gonna throw a third Buffettism in there. He also says, in your business partners and the people you do business with, you want 3 attributes. You want energy, intelligence, and integrity. And you need all 3 because if you don't have the third one, the first 2 will kill you. And that's 100% true. Yeah, I love that.
All right, thanks, Dan. So now I want to open up if the crowd any questions for the panel.
I know.
Yes, in the back, please.
Hi, my name is George, and
Thank you for stepping up. We can barely see what that means.
Like being on the stage.
Thank you.
I have a very unique investor situation in that my customers are my ideal investors, because if I solve this problem, it solves most of their most serious problems. And if I don't even try or they don't support me, they will likely not exist in 10 years. So, but the problem is, so I work in the fireworks industry and I'm trying to build a fireworks manufacturing operation in Brazil. And the investor or my customers / investors know nothing about your type of investing, which is, I think, is the ideal way to proceed with organizing the company. All of them, 40 years ago, started their company out in the back of their Buick, and that's how they know it. And so, from your perspective, how do you think I should approach them to re-educate them or educate them on what it means to be a group of investors investing in a business wherein the founders or someone other than them has sort of the majority of the control and authority to actually build and run that business?
So you would be distributing to them?
Yes,
they're buying your product.
And we had our first success, our first breakthrough in April, which was the first ever container fully tested, compliant consumer fireworks shipped from Brazil to the United States. And it hit the market this 4th of July season. And people always ask me how it went, and I say I got literally no customer feedback, which means that it completely integrated into the other products in the store, and didn't stand out in any negative way.
So many questions.
Yeah.
Give me one. So you're asking how you educate the people you want investing in your company
Each one, so let's say I'm gonna approach 7 different companies and I want them all to invest 500,000 dollars. And they all want 100% ownership of the company. How do I get around that problem?
But they're also your customers.
They're also my customers. And if
But my question is, should they be your investors?
Yeah,
Like, I actually
that's a
would
better
flip it
question,
and say,
yeah.
I don't know if your customers should be your investors unless you are actually going to build a whole new company where, you know, they're a consortium, so to speak, of founders. But I would say if they're your customers and they're good customers, why do they need to be your investors? I would get investment in a different.
The problem I found, because I've been working on this problem
Yeah.
in Tacoma and other for the last, well, since 2019. And what I find is that when I go out to sort of the general investment world, nobody understands fireworks. Everybody just immediately walks away from it, and the capital requirement compared to the ROI, you know, for the investor, it doesn't fit the normal profile. So I mean, it's a manufacturing business, so there's a lot of direct costs, and there's not like any exponential growth. Like if you want to grow, you better build more manufacturing capability and spend more materials and everything.
Can I ask a question about your customers? Are you selling to the tribal nations or?
No. So I'm selling to the people that would sell to the nations.
Okay.
And most of them are in the Midwest or on.
So it's interesting because I would have said, I'd go get money. I'd go work with
So someone else recommended that, but I could never get through
the
to
peoples
that.
of nations, right? Because you're not indigenous. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Yep, sure.
Any other questions? Yes, right here.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, sorry, it's a total addressable market, or yeah, how big is the problem you're trying to solve, and how much capital is in that market for that problem?
I also heard POC versus MVP. What is POC?
So MVP is a minimum viable product, and POC is a proof of concept. So POC could be a little bit earlier than MVP. MVP is like a working product, whereas a POC could be a prototype, but it's a minimum version of a product that someone with the core capability someone can use, and you can think about in a way that no beautiful front end, very not easy onboarding, no self-serve, but what are your core idea is implemented in the most simplified but usable way.
I would also just say with MVP, and I know you've seen this, is that a lot of new companies, when they're building, say, a software product, will keep trying to make it perfect.
Yeah.
And perfection is the death of any startup. So like an MVP is your golden ticket, right? Like get that MVP out there, let people pound on it, because you're going to learn so much.
Sure.
And do not wait. I mean, I've seen so many companies do that where, 5 years and they don't have an MVP yet because they keep saying, oh, we should add this feature, or we should add this feature. No, just what literally is a minimally viable product and get it out there as soon as you can.
Couple of months of MVP. We also, at times, when we see a product that's too mature, and even before it hits the market, we were like, wait, if they have to kind of pivot based on what the customer wants, they have to just undo and redo a lot of stuff, and it's more investment. So having a frugal MVP is actually more important than having a solid, beautiful product which customer has never seen.
Right, any other questions for the panel? Okay, so moving on. What's your take on this? Like a founder's raising money, right? And they have raised no money, right? When should they stop and reassess and start over? Like 4 months, 5 months, 6 months? Like they're going like 6 months. Maybe like a couple $1,000 here, maybe some soft money, but nothing like they need, right? When should they stop and like maybe focus on a product or something like that, right? I'll go with you first, Dan.
Gosh, I mean, this is a hard one. When do you know when to quit anything? It's hard to know. It's hard to know. I mean, you could be that one conversation away from just, blowing up, right? So who knows? I think that if I were just to put myself in their shoes, I would say, if I keep on running into walls, I would try to find ways to, meaningfully, maybe even radically change my approach, whether it's that like, hey, we're going to completely change, industries, products, whatever, like we need to, maybe I just need to take some time off. Maybe I need to go get a job, right, somewhere and think about it some time, or do something different, right? And I'll give one example from my own past experience. I'm not responsible for this at all, but it is something I experienced. I was at, I mentioned before, a drone delivery company called Zipline. They weren't always called Zipline. They were called Remotive before. That's what I joined. And initially, we made a robotic toy that you docked your iPhone on. And this toy was interesting enough. This was before I arrived at the company. Interesting enough that Tony Hsieh, the founder of Zappos, invested in the company. Brought the company over to, actually they were here in Techstars in Seattle, and then brought them down to Vegas for the Vegas Tech Fund. And then through there, they kept on getting more and more buzz and selling more products. Alfred Lin from Sequoia then led the Series A for the company. And so now they were kind of in the big leagues. They moved to San Francisco, et cetera. And I joined the company shortly thereafter. Well, it turned out this robotic toy, what seemed like a lot of buzz for it, the biggest Kickstarter ever at the time, things like that. Product market fit wasn't really there ultimately. And so after a big retail launch, the product didn't do that well. The founders and the leadership team could have continued to invest in this specific toy and things like that, but they chose not to. They chose to completely pivot. They said, hey, we're a robotics company. We have a robotics team. We have chemical engineers, electrical engineers, things like that. But we need to do something different. And they said, what can we do that's bigger than this? All right, we're going to pie in the sky, drone delivery. They still had money in the bank. So they were able to pitch, and credit to the team, they were able to pitch, hey, we're going to completely pivot, do something completely different that you weren't thinking about at all, but we have the team to do this. We're the right people to do this. And they got the right investors. You're talking about selling, right? They sold the right investors and the right partners. And now, gosh, I don't even know how much money, how many billions of dollars they've raised, or hundreds of millions of dollars they've raised. They're valued in the billions doing drone delivery. So
Yeah, thanks, Dan. See,
Wonderful. I'm going to answer this in a slightly different way of like, a lot of times when I meet founders, first of all, to be able to raise funding, why is it that the funding has been hard? Is it a really a venture scale business? I'm just talking about from a venture point of view, right? Why was the no? Is it definitely there's traction, but we also see a founder come and say, hey, we had $500,000, we're going to make next year $1 million, great, 100% growth, and then need funding. Well, will that be at IPO, the average or median revenue is anywhere between 100 to 400 million, right? Is there a path to that? And once you got IPO, then you become like $1 billion revenue company. The reason is like, is there an investor business model and a founder business model mismatch is why you don't get the funding? Do you have to, as you said, rethink your strategy and say, I need a different kind of investor? That's one. Secondly, telling a company is like, build a business for your customers, not for the investors. And when you build a company for customers, of course, investors come in not to make, some do with angel, but to help you build your MVP. But investors like to think that they'll come in and take your company from X amount of growth to hyper growth. But if it means that they don't come, your company is going to be dead, that's not a good situation to come in. You have to build a business which survives on its own. And then angel money, friends and family, different sources of capital. I know at times it's easier said than done because some are capex heavy businesses, some of them need R&D, but in general, can you survive without venture investor? And only if when you get the venture investor, will it like hyperscale your growth? So founder investor match kind of business, and then like why is the investor coming in to your company? These things matter. So I taking a step back, reflecting and saying, what do you need to change? Focus on building a business, or the other option, maybe this is not a problem, it's too ahead of the market, or maybe something needs some of the problems that couldn't be solved 2 years back are being solved today. So maybe it's a timing issue. So a founder knows they have a gut feeling, they know it.
All right,
Just listen to the gut feeling.
Yes, Margaret.
Yeah, you made me think of, I was working with a woman at Inventor who had a consumer product, and it was self-funded. And then I started working with her, and she was running out of money, and she had all her money went into inventory, right? And so I helped her kind of improve her marketing and her website and her, how she was doing e-commerce and all those things. And what we realized, and she was at that point, like, I don't have the energy left. I don't have, I've been just doing this on my own, right? So what kind of re-energized her is we started looking at, are you really going after the entire market? Like she was kind of throwing noodles to the wall, right? Like this is a consumer product that anyone would like. Like here's why everyone would enjoy this product. It's like, okay, but who would really need it? Like there's got to be niches, right? And when we started really breaking down into smaller markets, like the RV market, the college student market, the elderly market, because this product was like an ease of use thing. And then looked at the addressable market, looked at, what would be a costing strategy there, and then actually started going and talking to those markets more specifically. And then we found a distribution channel with an RV company, right? So it was like a completely different way of thinking about this problem, rather than just saying, this is a great product that everyone would like, which is where she started. And I think we do that a lot because we'll see anyone could use this, yes. But trying to go out to the market to everyone is very hard, and you don't have the money as a startup. So start to look at what are very specific use cases or niches of the market, and then put all your energy in that. Like go test it, go talk to a million people. She started going to those like Saturday markets, with the product and just seeking out people in some of these niches. So very guerrilla, marketing, which is brilliant. Like do that kind of thing. Like you've got to get out there. I know that sounds funny in this day of, digital everything, but that's where she had the conversations that we got focused. And then she got funding for that niche, built that thing, and went on from there and did very, very well. And now is, building the business. So I think that's the best story I can think of that kind of feeds into what both of you are saying. It was a very, self-starting founder, inventor, very scrappy.
Thank you, Margaret. Christopher?
Yeah, the rest of the panelists made great points. Know your market, find your niche, find the right investors. Like your question earlier, are you talking to manufacturing investors, for example? Like you mentioned, manufacturing is the main component of your business. Finding that niche and having those conversations with the right people is a great starting point to get the right kind of no's. And then I would even flip the question on its head and tell founders, don't stop too early. Like you mentioned like when to stop, but don't stop too early. If you haven't met with 100 investors in that niche, or the right kind of people or the right kind of investors for your product, don't stop or don't change unnecessarily.
Yeah, I think too many founders like talk to 10 people and they stop. Yeah, that's what
they get 2 or 3 no's and they're like, oh, my product's no good. I don't want to continue raising money. So having that
there's
that
so many
mindset,
stories like that too,
exactly.
right?
Having that mindset of taking no's on the chin and not affecting your business or not affecting your vision is critical for founders. So I'd say a good benchmark, not reaching out to 100 founders, but sitting down with 100 founders and then take that feedback from there if you're getting funding or not, and then it's change your business, finding the right markets, et cetera. So
next question, start with Christopher. Suppose there's a company out there you want to invest in, right? How do you convince them so that you can invest in a company? Like what value do you add to a founder, or like, how do you convince a founder, I want to invest in a company, take my money? If that makes any sense.
Oh, turning the question on to me, huh? No, I think that's important, right? Like we're interviewing founders for the right characteristics, so we want to invest in as a pre-seed. I think founders should also be interviewing the investor as well, vice versa. Do we have that network of people that's going to ultimately help you reach your goal? Do we have that operational experience that's going to help your business thrive in whatever market or enterprise you want to succeed in? Is our platform a right fit for you? If we're not a lead investor and you just need money, fine. Or if we're the lead investor, are you really going to make that difference for us? I don't think you should just take anybody's money. If you're a business, find the right investor, and that right investor can sometimes make or break what you're doing, and especially in the early stages. So as to why they might choose 161 Ventures as a pre-seed fund, I think we have a great platform. We consistently host events with successful entrepreneurs, successful investors that actually lead to impactful changes in somebody's early stage startup. As a matter of fact, we've made 11 investments, and several of our portfolio companies have said we're the most impactful investors on their cap table. We've either helped them get resources for their startup, engineering or otherwise, or helped them raise additional capital, not from us. So I think finding the right investor is critical, and interviewing both ways is also important.
Thank you, Christopher. Margaret?
Yeah, I agree so much. I thought of something when you said have 100 meetings. I used to always say whenever I was trying to pivot or do something different, whether it was a startup or something else, it was 100 cups of coffee, right? I always had that in my mind. I've got to go have 100 cups of coffee. Like you just buy people coffee, you know, have enough information. But I'm going to go back to that integrity word. There are a lot of investors without integrity too. And I've met some of them. So I think you need to make sure that you are interviewing the investor, but more importantly, do they share your values? Like, what are your core values? Separate from your product, separate from everything else. Make sure your investor shares those core values. Because I've gone in with, you know, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, my, you know, diversity inclusion mindset, and then I get just smacked down, you know, big time. And so if they don't care about your people side, your soul, they're not going to care about your business, right? And we're humans. So I think there has to be that connection of, is it smart from the type of business you're doing? So if they have great experience in B2B software and that is your product, great. Look for someone with that experience. You need someone that understands that market, right? If you have a consumer toy, well, go find someone that understands that market, right? So that's kind of the base. And then look for who they have in their network. Who else have they invested in? How have those companies done? You know, how have they treated their founders? There's a lot of, you know, investment funds that they get the founders in. As soon as you start making money, that CEO is gone, right? So will they bring you board members? Will they bring you advisors? That is the stuff that is golden, right? In those early days, that's what you need. And that they're investing in you, they're investing in your idea, yes, but they're going to surround you with people that are going to make you better.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Margaret. T.
Completely agree. I'll just add, I mean, you both covered most of it, is we actually ask our founders towards the end, what are you looking for in an investor? Why us? And we all think about it in a way like B2B SaaS, software. We have a lot of expertise in the region. That's why we come in very early stage in the region. A very few, like when a company is doing well, they're going to a Series A. That's the outcome we want. A lot of outside investors come in to help them out. But in the early stages, you need an investor that does not only give you the money, but also helps you grow, as you said, network of advisor, network of people and other portfolio companies looking at the success, but also partnership. Like, do you look at the time horizon that they need? Are they patient to stay with you for a long time, or do they have the end of the fund constraints? A lot of things come into play, but also say there's a company in real estate software. You need software experience, but you also need strategic investors, maybe writing smaller checks from the real estate industry to help you make those connections. So it could be multiple ways investors come in, but as a lead investor, you're going to spend a lot of time with them. And another thing I would say to look for, I mean, my 2 cents is investors ideally should not be prescriptive, not tell them how to run the company, but ask the right questions, make the right introductions. Otherwise, if you put an idea and someone else is executing, it doesn't make sense. So we are hyper aware of this part where even if we feel something based on our judgment, we'll just put the questions and maybe say, help them figure it out, but we'll never put it out there directly. It is for the founder to find out and take the right path. So kind of looking at the persona, even when you look at a VC firm, you're going to be working with a partner, or even an angel, you're going to be working with a specific angel. So how do you connect with them in a room when you have like really tense situations is also important.
Thank you, T. Dan?
I think the panel covered it beautifully. And the only thing I have to add is something from my personal experience, which is that, you know, I've noticed the deals that I've been, where I'm just a check and almost nothing else, have been the least fulfilling, maybe not necessarily the least financially successful, but the least fulfilling for me personally. Whereas the most recent investment I made, the company is relying on me regularly for expertise on personal finance and financial planning and investments and things like that, because the company is directly involved in that space. And that has been both rewarding, and I think the company is doing well, which is really, really nice. Yeah.
Could I add one thing
Yes,
to this?
yes,
That
please.
when you find an investor that you think is a good match, go wherever they are. I will just tell a personal thing. I got on a plane to Boulder for a 20-minute meeting, spent 24 hours in Boulder, but that 20-minute meeting was successful. And it was weird because the guy did not have shoes on during the meeting, but he knew this
Very
space
Boulder.
really well. I don't know if you've been to Boulder, but it's a weird fucking place.
Yeah.
But it was worth it. Like it was at the time that was like just flying there was a big deal. Financially staying in a hotel, like it was a big deal. But it was like I knew that 20 minutes was going to make or break it, and it did. So just do it. And the fact I got that meeting was like a friend of 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 a friend. So like look for the investors that are right for what you're doing, and then just find somebody that knows them and beg, steal, and borrow and get 30 minutes.
Thank you,
Sorry,
Margaret.
I just
No worries.
Yeah.
So Dan, next question. Is there something I should ask you that I haven't?
Oh gosh, put me on the spot here. Gosh. Well, I am on the spot, so I have to come up with it. Yeah. I think, and if I'm trying to put myself in the the shoes of the folks who are kindly listening to us here in the audience. Maybe specifically, what specific deals, what specific industries are we looking at? I know for some of the investors here, we've already talked about that, but I don't think I talked about that about myself. So I'll mention it. I've done investments, ranging from things that I don't understand too well, but I definitely knew the teams well, and I trusted them in medical device technology, things like that, right? Where I felt a lot of confidence in the team. I believe in what they've done. They've shown me traction, things like that. Great. Other investments I've done are in, again, personal finance, investment management space, that sort of thing. That's what I do as my day job. And so I feel much more comfortable to evaluate that, even if it's not necessarily, a team that I know that well. And then beyond that, for me, consumer packaged goods are the other thing that I've looked at and I've invested in. So if there's anybody in the audience who is, in those three particular things, I know they're pretty disparate. I'll look at B2B software too. I'll consider it, but I just let you know that it's not something that I particularly have any expertise on. Those three particular things, I'd be happy to chat about them more specifically if that's what you're working on.
All right, T, same question for you. What's something I should ask you that I haven't?
I'm sure there are so many questions that ought to be discussed. I don't have anything at the top of the head to kind of point out to. So it's been a great discussion. I think one of the things I thought I'll add from the last question was our partnership with founders is something that we have found our biggest asset. And one of the things that we are not really out there all the time talking about ourselves, but our founders do our job of like talking about Trilogy, which has been a great experience since the day I joined the team, helping them solve so many different kind of problems, starting from financial modeling to hiring their first salesperson, their first marketing person, the person who goes to become their co-founder. It's been such a huge spectrum. So I think that's where, since this is called finding a right investor, that's where it comes in, and being thoughtful about that is always going to help when the company is being built from 0 to 10. Once you're at 10, there'll be so many people who come to help you out, but this is the most crucial part.
Thank you, T. Margaret, for you. Something I didn't ask you that I should have.
The question that came to mind was, how do you keep believing in yourself? Because the vast majority of the public will think you're crazy. And the example I'll give is I lived in Taiwan for 10 years in the 90s, and I started a company there. And in Taiwan, people were amazing. So I'm a 5'10", very pale Irish American living in Taiwan, and every Chinese person I met would be like, great, what's the company? Who do you need printing? Do you need advertising? Do you need this? They immediately go into supply chain mode, right? Do you need investors? Do you need da-da-da? What are you selling? Like they just, because it's such a normal part of life. Of course, you're starting a company. That makes perfect sense. Tell me how to fit it into my ecosystem, my supply chain. How can I help? And I was 30 years old. So let me give that context too, right? So now you know how old I am. And I would come home to America and they'd be like, well, what makes you think you can start a company? You're not even Chinese. You're only 30 years old. Have you ever started a company before? And so I very quickly realized I am not listening to that. I am not taking that input. And I would just surrounded myself with people who either had been in that world, believed in me, asked me questions, was curious, because it was so easy to get sucked into this energy of like, why am I doing this? What makes me think I can do this? Am I crazy? I don't have any right to do this. I'm not even, from Taiwan, blah, blah, blah. And it just, I learned very quickly, surround yourself with people who love and support you, or just support the idea. And just honestly, even if it's your mother, ignore them for a while. Not that that happened, but maybe it did. Until you kind of get it done. Because I'm just going to tell you, and you probably already experienced this if you're starting a company, 99.9% of the people you meet are not going to be like these people. They're going to be like, you have no right to start a company. 90% of companies fail. I mean, I started a restaurant. 75% of restaurants fail. You should never invest in a restaurant. Okay, like we've done great. But it's just the human psyche. So that's what I would say.
Thank you, Margaret. Christopher, how about for you?
It's great. Be a little crazy. Why not? Yeah, something that came to my mind at the end here is where to find investors, right? I think the best way to get in front of investors is face to face. Of course, cold emailing or getting a warm introduction for a Zoom meeting is great, but it's not as impactful as a face to face meeting. And where are investors normally? Put yourself in the shoes of an investor.
The bar.
Happy hour, maybe. Obviously, panel discussions like this, coming up to investors afterwards, is a great starting point. Look for VC events, maybe VC hosted event is a great starting point. Angel networks, you mentioned the Seattle Angel Conference. Reaching out to anybody on LinkedIn from there, or finding events that they may sponsor or host is a great point. Accelerators or incubators, a lot of investors are going to circle around where talent congregates. So those programs can be great starting points to find investors. And then just situational luck. If you're not finding investors, put yourself in a situation that you're not used to being in. That can drive change for you if you're stagnating your growth. Yeah, just where to find investors is, it's not super difficult. There's been a big influx in venture capital around the world in the past 10 years. But for a first-time founder, it may seem like a daunting task, especially if you're looking for the right investor.
All right, so Chris, the next one, I want to thank all the panelists for doing this. So 2 more questions. First one is, what can we do for you? Do you have an Ask for Anybody or anything that we can do for you?
Well, yeah, I guess I can give an ask. I don't typically like to start with an ask. I like to start with a give, but I'll start with a give first. If you're a first-time founder or a founder working on a pre-seed stage company and you might need some kind of advice, we have collectively between the partners of our fund about 10,000 usable connections that we can make for you guys in different areas or industries. So I could offer some kind of advice for that. An ask I might give, I'm working on a publication right now. I'm publishing a coffee table book on innovative startups or companies in government, or maybe a dual use tech company. So if you know of any companies that should be featured in that, definitely reach out to me so I could chat with them. And then maybe 20 or so thought leaders on policy change. That could be an AI or just around tech in general in government. I'd love to chat with those people as well.
Thanks. How about for you, Margaret? Anything we can help you with?
Can't think of an ask. I would just make it personal, just say, keep believing in yourself and go get those 100 cups of coffee. Like, just hit the road.
Yes. How about you, T? Anything?
Many more of panels like this all over Washington, Seattle too. No, this is great. This has been a great discussion, great group. And yeah, all the things that we said, if there are any questions after this, feel free to reach out to us. Always happy to talk and offer the time.
Thanks, T. Dan.
For me, I'm always interested in talking to and meeting interesting people, considering deals and things like that. My personal availability of capital, because I am just an angel investor, I don't have a fund or anything like that, waxes and wanes with different personal financial situations. But you know, I'm always very interested to meet folks who have ideas or who are working on something, because and I have to put myself out there. I have to say, hey, I actively do this. Otherwise, no one knows, right? It doesn't say on my, LinkedIn profile. I could say it, but like, that's not what I'm trying to advertise. Maybe trying to advertise my day job, right? Like, it doesn't say on my LinkedIn profile, please call me if you have like investment. But I'm saying that, yeah, exactly. I'm saying that here because this is the right audience for it. That would be my ask. I'm always interested to meet interesting people working on interesting ideas.
So this will be the last one. Give us any advice or wisdom on anything you want to talk about.
Oh gosh. All right, coming back to me again. So this is just going to be for me on the, more on the personal finance side, because that is my realm of expertise. And what I'll say is that there's a strong component, if you personally haven't run into it yet, you will, of making sure your personal finances are in order before you become an entrepreneur or before you think about going down that path. A lot of people don't consider it. They're so caught up in their idea, and they love their idea, and maybe even their idea has some traction, which is great. But you have to think about the impact it's going to have on you outside of just your business, right? You still need to be able to, live somewhere, feed yourself, clothe yourself, maybe have a family to take care of, things like that too. And so, that aspect of things is also something I'm very comfortable talking about, having started my own business, et cetera, and making sure I was in the right financial position to do so before I did. And so that's a consideration I feel like isn't always talked about enough. I know folks do bring it up, but I particularly, that's what I do for a living. So I'm always happy to chat about that.
All right, thank you. T.
I think enough was said on this panel, so nothing to add, just reiterating, build the business and the company for your customers, and they are your biggest champions.
Thank you, Margaret.
Yeah, I'm going to build on what Dan said. Marriage counseling is really good too, just for that. Like, no, but seriously, startups are hard on relationships financially. And so just take care of that part of it too. Yeah.
Thank you, Christopher.
Yeah. That's true.
I'm gonna go on the reverse side of what they said.
Not marriage counseling?
No, not
Break up with her.
not
I'm
that.
kidding.
I would say don't start a business unless you're comfortable not making any money for several years.
Yeah.
Because that's oftentimes the case, right? Like, you're not going to be profitable for quite a while. It's not always the case, but unless you have that mindset of starting from zero or failing back to zero after you've made it quite a way, don't even get into this business.
All right, thanks. I want to thank the panelists for doing this. I really appreciate you. Yes. All right, thank you everyone for your time today, and they'll be around for a little bit to answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's
Thank
take
you.
let's take a picture real fast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sit.
Just sitting?
Sitting or standing?
Sit or stand or
Sitting's great.
I don't mind.
That's good.
you don't mind sitting?
You
Okay.
want to squish together?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think my camera can get it, so we're.
Don't squish.
Put us on 0.5.
Okay, that's right.
0.5. You want me to?
No,
go?
no, you
Okay,
can.
1, 2, 3. Perfect, thank you. And I'll
Thanks.
make sure, thank you again.
Thank
I
you.
I think I had you on LinkedIn. so-
Yeah, absolutely.
It was great.
Dan, thank you.
Yeah,
of
I mean,
course. Thanks for inviting me. I
Right.
we
appreciate
should
it.
catch up again.
T, thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Yes.
I just,
Oh,
I think
really?
Thank you.
Yeah, so I would love to. see
Yeah,
you
let's
guys
do
do
that. Let's definitely do that.
Especially if you're gonna be.
I am. I don't have a card. What about LinkedIn?
Oh, yeah. In case it picks
Yeah,
up.
no worries,
on,
no worries.
the rest
No
of
worries,
the
no worries.
Incredibly.
Oh,
Let's
yeah.
start.
Hey, thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. Yes.
What's your name?
I'm so.
Oh, yeah. That's
Yeah, I'm
you-
so curious.
Yeah.
How
I
you
mean,
started that.
Yes, thank you.